Hey there, and welcome to another Ask Me Anything session. I have been collecting the questions that you all submitted on my community post, as well as all of the comments and questions that have been submitted on my other two Ask Me Anything videos. And can I just say, I've loved seeing all of the interactions, and these questions are really, really good. So I'm going to continue trying to make as many videos as I can to get through them and answer them honestly and hopefully usefully. I also wanted to say thank you so much for helping me reach the 8,000 subscriber mark, which happened this week. This is so exciting, and I just can't even express how grateful I am for all of you to continue returning to my videos and allowing me to build this wonderful community. With that in mind, I did want to let you know of something that I created with all of you specifically in mind. It is a story self-assessment that you can download for free by going to the link in the description below. You'll enter your name and email, and it will be delivered as a PDF to you via email. It is something I was really excited to create for you. I know how hard it can be to identify the strengths and weaknesses in your own work, and so I created this worksheet for you to help identify those areas for yourself and hopefully take your story, whatever it is, to the next level. It's also going to sign you up for my newsletter that I'm planning to launch very soon with exclusive tips and resources. So with all that said, let's dive into some more questions. First question here. With all the issues going on in the traditional publishing world, overwork, stress, backlog, etc., is it still a viable publishing path for authors trying to get started with their careers? So I got an actually very similar question on TikTok, and I am so glad that you asked it, because as an author in this landscape, seeing what's going on with people resigning from the traditional publishing world, I can understand the anxiety you must feel, especially if you do want to pursue traditional publishing. The short answer is yes. I do still think it is a viable path. I know that agents, including someone who I just reconnected with a few weeks ago, are actively reading queries. They're still signing new clients. They're ready to continue championing your stories and bringing them to publishing houses. That said, I'm not going to lie. All the current kind of tumultuous nature of the industry might slow down the process in terms of finding an agent, and then in terms of the agent submitting your book to publishing houses, just because shifts in the industry cause more work for everyone, and that results in longer timetables, and traditional publishing is already a very long process. So I would keep that in mind, but I would absolutely still pursue this path if it is the one you have determined is right for you and your book. I'm also going to cover this topic in a bit more detail in an upcoming video, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. Next question is, are you planning to do another first 10 pages critique giveaway anytime soon? Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. I do want to do another giveaway. I'm not quite sure what it will look like yet. The 10-page critique seemed to be really popular and it went over really well, so that's definitely on the table. But also let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to see in terms of a giveaway, and I'll definitely consider it. Next question is, I have a finished manuscript, but now I am realizing that the plot twist towards the end is a bit too dramatic and a bit unbelievable. Can you brief about how I should edit my story so that it doesn't affect the rest of the story? Also, because I pretty much feel the rest of my story is strong until the end. Great question here, and I completely understand where you're coming from. You have identified this one area, this one twist as an issue in the story, and you want to fix that without having this domino effect that then, trashes or changes everything else in the story. I'm not sure I have the answer that you want to hear. And let me preface this by saying I am a structural/developmental editor. So what I do day in and day out is pretty much break stories down so that we can build them back up stronger. And it is not uncommon for me to recommend a change, not unlike what you are identifying in your own story, that actually impacts a lot of the rest of the story. My advice to you would be, don't shy away from that. If you need to change this plot twist and make it stronger, that's only going to strengthen everything else you've built up to it, because that's going to result in a more natural conclusion for your book, and you want to make sure that it's cohesive from beginning to end. So I would say, don't be afraid of deconstructing what you already have there. Think of your book as malleable. Think of it as clay that you are molding and you're reshaping constantly. If you open up those doors, you're actually going to see a lot more of creative opportunities in your story. All right, next question here. Is it possible to self-publish a novel after literary agents have rejected it? If you have not secured official representation from a literary agent, aka you have not signed a contract with a literary agent, that story is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. You can set it aside and decide to query again later in the future, or you can publish it however you want to. It is your story at the end of the day. And also, even if you do sign with a literary agent, it is still your story. Now, if you sign with a literary agent, it is understood that you are going to pursue the traditional publishing path, but until there is a book deal where you are giving rights to publish your book, that book can be published the way that you want to publish it. So yes. Next question here is, do you have any plans of agenting for books, or are you sticking to YouTube and freelance editing? Becoming a literary agent was absolutely a career path that I seriously considered, particularly when I was working for a literary agency. I was an assistant for about 2 years, and that was a potential next step, was to slowly start building my own list and becoming a junior agent and then working up my way through the ranks from there. Why I ultimately didn't decide to go down that path is because I love getting into the nitty-gritty of the story too much. And agents certainly operate as editors. There are fantastic agents out there, many of whom are also former editors, who can transform your manuscript and do a ton of structural developmental work with their clients before they sell the book. But I ultimately was more interested in the editing side, working closely with the author to create the absolute most effective version of the story possible. The agent's editorial side of their job kind of fizzles out, not entirely, but mostly fizzles out after the book sale is made. And I couldn't see myself being wholly okay with just letting it go from an editorial perspective. So that's why I transitioned into editing at Penguin Random House and then becoming an independent editor. But that's just a personal preference. So for now, definitely sticking to my independent business and bringing you these YouTube videos because I'm really enjoying all of the interactions we're having and growing this community. Okay, next question here. Oh, kind of related. Have you ever thought of writing a book? And then something about my sentences potentially singing with perfection. I'm not convinced that that would be the case, to be quite honest. Writing a book is not on my roadmap right now. To be quite honest, it never has been on my roadmap. It's interesting because a lot of people who are editors, literary agents, independent or in-house are actually writers by trade. There are many publishing professionals who are also published authors. There are many independent editors who are also published authors. I really do deep down consider myself an editor first. Of course, I think most of us got into the business and got into the industry because we had an interest in writing, which I did. I minored in creative nonfiction when I was in school. So I did write at that time of my life, but somewhere along my education and internship experience, I realized that I really identified more as an editor than a writer. So I'm not gonna close the door entirely on the idea of writing a book, but I feel like I'd have to have a lot more time and I'd have to have an idea, which I do not have right now. I'd rather work with all of your stories. Okay, one more question here is, I have to ask, what's the best way to approach agents when I have a trilogy? Great question. If you have a sequel to your novel or a trilogy or even maybe more in the series, either planned or already written, you still have to query agents ideally with the first manuscript in the series. And that is because the agent ultimately has to make a book deal for that first book in most cases before a publisher is willing to agree to publish the rest of the books. It's unlikely that a publisher is going to agree to publish a trilogy right off the bat if you are a debut author and there's no track record of sales. That's just too high risk for them. What they would do is publish the first book in the trilogy and then potentially make you a book deal for the next installments in the series if that one does well. That's why whenever you have multiple books planned in a series and you are querying, I strongly recommend telling the literary agent that the book can stand alone, but you envision it as part of a trilogy, or but it has series potential. That's the phrasing I would use, and I would also try to revise the manuscript so that it can be as standalone as possible. That is going to make your manuscript more commercially appealing and more appealing to a literary agent. It's not off the table that a literary agent says, I love this, I want to sell the whole trilogy, but it's a lot tougher than selling one book on its own. All right, so I think that wraps it up for today's Ask Me Anything. As I mentioned earlier, hit that link in the description below to download my story self-assessment for free. And as always, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, leave me any comments on this video and I will add them to my ongoing list of questions to answer in future Ask Me Anything sessions. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.